welcome to the Bible Talk, a podcast brought to you by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm your host, Angie Kim. I hope the year 2022 is going well for you all, by God's grace. Amen. The Bible Talk is our new podcast series being launched on YouTube and Facebook, as you know. The Bible Talk is a sub-program under our YouTube channel titled The Bible Time. In the Bible Talk, we discuss a wide range of topics relating to Christianity, the church, and the Bible. It is an open and safe space to talk about the questions that we may have had at some point in our daily Christian walks, but we did not get the opportunity to freely discuss those within church, at home, or elsewhere. Today's episode features David Joe, Angie Kim, myself, and Samuel Dana. We discuss our thoughts around tithes and offerings. Kicking off our discussion today is the question of, should we tithe before or after tax?
Happy Sabbath. Welcome to the Bible Talk. For today's podcast, we will talk about tithe. So when we tithe, how should we tithe? Should we tithe based on our gross income or net income? Meaning, should we tithe before or after taxes?
Well, I don't know if there's really one correct answer to this, but I heard a sermon before, many years ago, at a Korean church, and of course the pastor was of the view that we need to pay the tithe on our gross income. So before tax, yeah. So I didn't really question that, but at that time, this was many, many years ago, and I was working for a Korean media organization, and the income at that time was, I would say, 1/5 or 1/6 of what I'm making now. And so it was really, really tough because let's say I was making a little less than $2,000 per month, and then my monthly rent would be about $600 USD. Yeah, and then, you have your life expenses, like your food and clothing or whatever, and then, you don't really have a lot left, and you do have to worry about, since, you are now working, you do need to think about how to reward your parents, for having raised you and, all that. So it was really, really tough, although I understood the reason why the pastor preached a sermon about that. I wanted to give to the Lord willingly, of course, too, but the reality was very, very difficult. So I don't want to kind of judge people because whatever they may be going through could be vastly different from person to person. So now, as I'm making a lot more by the grace of God, it's a lot easier. It's also a lot easier. The willingness to return the tithe is there, of course, and it's just super easier compared to back then because I have more. I've been given more. I know, at least 1/10 of it should go to God, and it's easier, undoubtedly. So.
Well, this could be a challenge for some people in another country. Like, well, in Korea, we don't have a higher. I mean, our tax rates is not that high when compared to other countries. Like when we talk about Canada, based on their incomes, of course, but some people may have to pay 40% of taxes. I mean, their tax rates are quite higher than other countries, and there are some European countries also. Where tax rates are higher, up to like I said before, 40%, sometimes even up to 50%. And when your tax rates are that high, then your gross income and net incomes are very different. And maybe to those people, tithing can be a challenge.
Yes, so I think we want to first have a base. As a Christian, people still contest this idea as to tax paying tithing or giving their tithes and even offering. Because there's this content, oh, I've given my 10%, then that's all. I don't have to. But there's this other thing about offering. Offering is not part of the 10%. So, do you have a limit for that? No. And we don't negotiate with God on tithe. He is specific on the amount or the percentage of your earnings. I would like to use earnings instead of income. Because people pay tax even out of their animals. People pay tax out of their farm produce. People even pay tax out of other things rather than just income. That's one point. Then if we want to say, is it really important? Because some people say, oh, we are in the world, we are not of the world. Should I even give to support the work? Oh, the government is mismanaging the funds. What should I do? But the other point is that we need to give, because when the Pharisees and the other guys came to Christ to tempt him, should we pay tithe to Caesar? They even were specific, not to the government, to Caesar, because they knew that maybe Caesar is doing the work of not the Lord. But Christ said, give what belongs to Caesar to him, and give what belongs to God. Then when we come to, should we pay tithe after we have received out of our net income or out of our gross income? I would think that you should pay it out of your net, because that belongs to you. The other one doesn't belong to you. The tax you give to the government is not your income. It should be taken out. But you find that in some countries or some certain jurisdictions, the incomes come to you before you even deduct your tax. But others, it's automatically deducted from source. So you don't even know, it's not your income in the first place. It belongs to the state. That's just because apart from maybe income tax, there are other taxes, other deductions that are done on your salary, like pensions, like maybe health insurance, like road tolls. Some they may deduct it automatically. There are other expenses from the government. Currently, even in my country, people even pay COVID tax. Yeah, it's deducted. So in that case, that money doesn't belong. It's just like the income the government is saying you work for this, right? But before the money comes to you, he deducts. So let me say, for instance, in a country where the tax rate, like I know in the Scandinavian country, they pay even up to 40% of their income. Let me say there is a country that the state is saying that he's going to provide all the amenities, all your accommodation, everything for you. But I'm going to, let's say I'm paying you 100,000, right? But your tax is going to be 90. You get that? And gives you only 10. You can't pay 10 of the 100. It's not possible because he didn't give you that 100. So to me, I think for incomes, especially for salary earnings, we should pay tax out of the incomes that gets to you. Later, if you want to deduct your accommodation, you want to deduct for utilities, you want to deduct for maybe other things in the house, then that is what goes to you. But for instance, like this international organization where they don't pay tax. So I still feel that the money that gets to you is the one you should pay your income, your tithing on. Then the other part is not only people get income from many sources. Even government is saying pay gift tax. I get a gift. So I don't say, oh, because this gift is this, I should just pay my tithe on that. Maybe I get some other income from another source that is even not part of my mainstream income. That is what got to me. Whether government has taxed me or not, I should pay tithe on what gets to me. That's my thinking. Yeah, that's what I think. Thank you.
Thanks for covering bonuses. And well, for me, I have been tithing based on my gross income, and it's just personal choice, and I don't expect others to do the same, make the same choice. I just wanted to do that way, since there's no biblical guidance on this area, because Bible doesn't talk clearly about this. Well, Malachi 3:10, I guess, was it Malachi 3:10? Yes. It talks about how God, so tithing is somehow related to blessing. I would respect everyone's decisions and their reasons behind how they make their decisions. There's this pastor who talks about when he was answering this question, his answer was, do you want God to bless you with gross blessings, or do you want a net blessings? And that's what his answer was. So there are these people who are saying that we should tithe after tax, or we should tithe before tax. So my conclusion is we should not judge each other's decisions. And if it's not asking too much, can you share with us how you tithe? I mean, Samuel, you told us already about...
Yes.
Yes.
So I think tithing should be part of your Christian behavior. Just like I wake up, you can't say you are a Christian without praying. You can't say you are a Christian without reading your Bible. So tithing should just be part of that kind of Christian living, to the extent that you even find a joy in doing it. Not that, maybe one thing I feel is, even if I'm not able to come to church, I feel that even if I have 2 minutes to come and even give out my tithe or offering, I'm fulfilled. Because I know that, because it should be something that is part of us from the growth in our Christian life. And one thing should be that I think the tithing should be something flexible. Like if I want to give tithe, just as you mentioned, you are saying you prefer doing it on your gross income. Personally, I think I shouldn't give tithe exactly 10%. I'll feel guilty, even though it's 10%, because I want to put some margin. So if it's I have some income, let's say I have, let's say, $250, right? Let me put it that way. And I'm supposed to give $25. I'll feel guilty. I'll just say, oh, let me make it 30. Just to, yes. Then afterwards, I ask myself, what would be the other offerings I should give to the work of God? So it's something that we should make it a life that, let's say, for instance, maybe I get $10,000. Then I just pick only $10,000 exactly to come and give to God. I feel, it looks like I'm really negotiating on a thin line with God. That's what I feel. So why don't we just make 1,002 or 1,005? So that to show that I'm happy that I'm able to do this, but I'm also excited to give more to the work of God. Because people do donations. People who are not even Christian do charity. So if I can do charity to other people, and it's even through the work of God or giving to God, why don't I do it with that kind of willingness and excitement? And another thing I also see personally, I've seen the handwork of God in tithing and offering. Personally, that's how I see. For instance, apart from the tithe, I can tell you that maybe if I'm left with my last money or something, and I just come and give it to the house of God, within the week I'm going to get that more than that. I just see it clearly. And it's not once, it's not twice, it's recurring. So sometimes, if I'm doing it, even if it means I just have maybe $10 or something, I just, what should I do? Just go and give it to the work of God. I'm going to get some gift, multiples of that. So whether I get or I don't get, I even feel very excited that I've done something like that to the work of God. So, and there are examples in the Bible about Elijah meeting the widow, do this, just the last part, she does it, gets back, and they couldn't even. So just imagine that when we even donate to society, how me personally, one thing that makes me more happy is being able to give to somebody. That is my fulfillment. I feel very happy that I'm able to give something to somebody, and that fellow is just, it has helped them in some way. I feel fulfilled. That's just what I feel. So how about doing that to the work of God? Then I feel more excited. And the bonuses or the issue about I getting some reward, God just shows me it manifests in something, I get some returns, is just something that I feel so excited about. Yeah.
As for me, so I may have alluded to this, but I also work for an international organization that's like the United Nations, and so my income is tax exempt. Within an international organization, there could be, a group of people who are called international staff, or professional staff, and their tax, their income, their salary is tax exempt. And so what that means is that currently I am based in Korea, but I'm working for an international organization, and because my income is tax exempt, I'm not being tracked by the Korean government. And so within the Korean government system, I may be seen as someone without a job. So yes, I'm kind of like a foreign expat, I would say, although I'm a Korean national living in Korea, because I work for an international organization as an international staff. Anyway, so what that means is that I'm free from the influence of tax, at least when it comes to my salary, my income. And so I don't have to worry about, oh, should it be gross income or net income, because it's the same. So I have the privilege of, having that status. And so I just give to God willingly the tenth of what I make as, in tithe. And so I didn't have to have that dilemma or, try to make a decision on what to do with my income. And I really like what Samuel said, his principle when it comes to giving to God or giving back to God, returning what's rightfully his, right? One principle I would say that I have is tithing and offering is very important. As he said, it's part of our worship. It's something that every Christian should do. It should be as natural as breathing, I would say. And for me, I try to give to God the tithes and offerings the first thing when I get my salary or the monthly income. So whenever I see that it's been transferred into my account, that's the first thing I do before paying for my utilities or paying for the apartment maintenance fee, or even thinking about what to give to my parents, for instance, out of my gratefulness to them. I just automatically send my tithe and offerings to the church account, and then I notify Deaconess Huang, who's sitting over there. And yes, because that's just something that I picked up. Although I say God should be at the center of my life, he's my first priority, but I acted in ways that didn't really seem like he was my priority. And so it really struck me some years ago. So I made a personal choice to return the tithes and offerings the first thing whenever I get my monthly income. And I have been doing that, and I feel good about it because, of course, there are many things that I probably am not doing right as a Christian, but that's one thing that I am personally very much devoted to. And then another thing I really liked about what Samuel said is this, giving. He likes to share, his extra income or bonuses. He wants to share the benefits of that with other people who may be in need, and that's exactly what God tells us to do. And yes, so sometimes I think, yes, giving to the work of God, giving to the church is really good, but sometimes for me it's not so visible, like where the offerings go to, for which activities it's really being spent. Of course, I still return my offering, not really asking, but sometimes because it's not so visible, you kind of wonder. And so that's why I'm kind of thinking I need to find like an extra, like a charity or, similar organization, because at least for them, they can even connect you with a specific child who's really in need, a child with a single parent or a child being raised by a grandparent, and then you're able to see, okay, whatever you donate for the cause of that child, let's say, you get to see and you get to kind of, be friends with that child, and, you can even exchange letters with that child, and that kind of visibility and knowing that, yes, the money that you gave is being spent really well, and it's helping the child grow and being fed, doing some other, activities that are good for that child's education. Yeah. So that has been one of my, kind of desire. Okay, I am already giving to the church, but I also want to be able to see how the money is being spent, and so that's something I personally have been trying to do. But then there's always this thinking that creeps into my mind, and it's something that, for instance, my mom would always say. She's like, your first priority should be the family. Within the family, I mean, not just my parents and my brother, but, like these relatives who could use your help, for instance, your financial help. And so she's like, don't even think about, helping someone outside of this circle, but, your family and relatives should come first, And so that always kind of comes into my, thinking. I know she has a point, but then I also do think that sometimes you need to get out of your family circle and be able to help a lot more people out there, So, yes, that's just something that I personally kind of struggle with. So I want to hear from you guys what you would do if you are in that kind of situation.
So it's very good, especially I know tithing and giving, even giving, is something difficult for many people, and it's refreshing to always know that we have Christian brothers and sisters like you who earn a lot. We want to donate to the work of God. The church is challenged, especially not only here. We go to many, especially as Adventist church. Most of the people who join are generally poor. Maybe they are not in big positions, because some of these high-earning organizations may not be in sync with our faith because of some constraints, right? So you see that either some just take some jobs like middle level, or many people don't have jobs. So if we have people who can even give tithe and also donate to the work of God, then it's something very good. And especially as young people, you find that there is more to enjoy with the extra money you make, right? You see colleagues making maybe investment, colleagues trying to have fun, travel, but you are deciding to give this money to the work of God, then it's something that shows about your faith. I think tithing is part of the faith we have in God. That's one of the best way to test our faith. You have something, you have to take it off. Something you feel precious. I'm not saying money is everything or income is everything, but money is something that people value a lot, especially income. So if somebody is able to part with their income, people will even kill to get money. Yeah, but so it means that even though we know one best, or the fathers of faith is Abraham in the Bible, where the Bible said there were other things, but one of the tests was when Abraham was ready to sacrifice his only son. Then if people can sacrifice just their even children, because I don't know, here is common. Other societies where people do rituals to make money, they ask them, go and bring the best, or the son or your daughter you love, or your firstborn, to come and make a ritual to be able to get some monies. And people will do that all for fame. So if people are ready to give out to God as she is doing, I think it's very good and refreshing to know. And I think with the other giving part, we should have an objective, and it should be unbiased. One thing, like I can say maybe I'm a pastor or I'm somebody, I only care about outsiders, but those around me are suffering. It's not good. Your mom has a point. But you can also focus on only insiders and forget the other ones, because sometimes our giving is like, maybe if I want, some people who are well to do, maybe I always want to give you something because I know if I'm in trouble, you also give me. That because of that expectation, there's no blessing in that, right? Yeah. But if we find people around our inner circles, let's say your brother, your sister, your auntie, you can help, do your part. But don't forget the external one. Because maybe your auntie, your brother can help you directly, because if you need help. But it's more blessed to help somebody who cannot even help you at all. That's why you can even donate to people you've never met before, but you saw their plight and give it to them. Yeah, so we should balance it. If you give those people and you neglect your immediate family, it's not good. Yeah, so you can balance that, but don't focus on too much on one side and leave the other one. So if I have a brother, I have a sister, she's in need, and I think it's really in need, I can do my part, give. But whilst I'm doing that, I also know, oh, somebody I've never met or something, what can I do to do that? Yeah. And I think giving, tithing and giving is not only a Christian thing. I think it has, if everything has its foundations on the world. But I tell you that if you read about even these famous people who have never been to church, they know the benefit of giving. So they don't just sit down and say, oh, let's go and give to. They know what they get from it. They know. If you read this book, The Richest Man in Babylon, he tells you that one of the principles is that always give 1/10 of what you have, whether you are a Christian or not. And you find that, like Muslims, they know how to, everything has, I think everything has its direction from the Bible to God. But other religions have seen the benefit and they have taken it and they are really doing it. They even do donations, even to go around the poor people, give them, because they know what they can get from it. So there is blessing in giving. And I would like to also mention that we shouldn't neglect the offering part. I know sometimes people just, oh, yeah, tithe and offering, is it the 10% combined, or tithe is this? But I think that we shouldn't focus just on the 10%, because even in that book, I'm saying it's a worldly book, but it has its principle linked to the Bible, where it says that after giving 10% of your income, if you are a Christian, that's tithing. If you are not a Christian, it means something else to you. But the next thing is that also give to the poor in society, giving alms. That is the offering part. So some Christians will say, oh, I pay my tithe 10%, and that's all. No. Talk about the offering. Because in Malachi 3:10, he said, oh, where do you rob me? He said, in your tithe and offering. Yes. So let's try and, let me see. Yes, exactly what I wanted to put across. Yes.
Now, what about tax return? Because there's been, this question is also quite popular among Christians, and I brought this to hear from you what you guys think about this.
Tax return?
Yes. Should we tithe? Should we tithe about tax return?
Yeah, she doesn't do tax return, let me tell you. Yes, so with tax return, yeah, it's just a government mechanism where you do a reconciliation.
Oh, and the reason why this is becoming a question is, for some people, I mean, like I said before, there are people who would tithe before tax or after tax, and those who tithe before taxes, they already tithed on this tax return money. But on the other side, those who tithed after tax, it shouldn't be a problem. They would just, it's like you said before, it's an increase. So they will tithe on this tax return too. But I'm talking about those who tithe before tax. Yes.
So that is where it's all about faith. And that is where people think that, oh, I really, you are really negotiating with God on some strict rules. One, tax returns doesn't mean that automatically when you go for tax return, you are going to get some income. Sometimes you have to even pay. That's one point. You never expected this money to come to you. The government has done a reconciliation on your earnings, and they've done a reconciliation on the tax you've paid and your spendings, and they found out, oh, you really paid more tax. Let's give you this, right? And just as I'm saying, it can also, even though let's say you took 100,000, but you paid the one that came to you was 600 as your net, but you paid the tax on the 100,000, right? And that was, you paid the tithes on the 100,000. But now all of a sudden, there you go to government to do your tax return, and you got this extra 10,000 as a tax refund, right? And you feel, oh, yeah, I already paid. It's like how about if you have not gotten it? Just still ask yourself. So that's why you shouldn't talk about that one. Even I will not talk about it as offering, as tithe. I'll talk about it as offering, because it's something I never expected. I got this. Then I have to give offering to God. The other way is that you go and they tell you, oh, really, when we check through the system, then next time, God, if I'm God, I'll just tell you, next time, I'll make you pay double of it. So do you tell government that, oh, I already paid tax, I will not pay this again? Let's get the logic. Let's say you've already paid your tax already, and you thought you did very well, but government saw that you were not spending. You didn't spend on other taxes. Then after paying maybe 10% of the tax to government, you go to the tax office and they say, oh no, you really, so pay more 500. You tell government, I will not pay. So just, because it's God, we think we can negotiate. But government, you have to pay. So to me, it's an unexpected income to you. And if it comes that way, or extra income to you in some way, so still give to the work of God. Or donate to a good cause. Yeah. So if that still comes to it, I'll feel guilty. And I think that fellow should feel guilty because it's like, oh, we are really very strict on God. Yeah.
Now the next famous question. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, but I really don't know much about this topic because I've been, living in and out of Korea, and yeah, I didn't really have to struggle with the, tax payment because when I was working for a Korean company many, many years ago, as Samuel said, they deducted already, and that, you get the net income anyway, so I didn't really have to worry about it. They were very good at taking what's theirs, right? And then after that Korean company experience, I've been living overseas, and yeah, I didn't really have to pay tax on my income. So thank you. I actually learned something new by hearing you guys talk about this aspect of tax refund and tax return. So,
Well, for me personally, I also get a net income from my employer because you see, it's not an organization, so it's an individual employer, and so it's not really systemized like you guys. This is, once again, this is just a personal choice, on individual basis. I would calculate my net income, and I mean from my net income. So what?
Gross.
Yes, what my gross income would be, and based on that gross income, I would tithe. Not in a legalistic way. I just enjoy doing that, and I don't encourage others to do that. It's just me. Okay. Yes. But anyway, coming back to my question, the next famous question is, where should we tithe? I mean, there are some people, I think Samuel briefly touched on this, but there are some people who have questions about where my tithe or my offerings are used. And since they have this, maybe some of them may have doubts, or some of them just would like to see how their offerings or tithe are spent clearly. So there are people who would pay their tithe or offerings not to their church, but to other organizations, like what Yunji mentioned. There are these organizations, non-profit organizations, or some individuals who would connect us with people in need. So I also have some of those people, and they would often inform me about how the recipient is progressing because of my or others' donations. So do you think it's okay to send your tithe to somewhere other than your church?
Can I come in? Sure. Yes. I think this is pretty clear. As I mentioned, we can say, oh, tithing is about faith and it's like worship. Because in the past, you worship by making sacrifices. You go to the house of God, you do a cleansing, you worship to God. So you can't say, I will not come to church, but I want to worship by, let me go and worship, give my worship maybe to G-Tower. We have, and Malachi states it clearly. He says that bring ye all the tithe into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house, and prove me now. He didn't say into maybe another organization's storehouse, into my storehouse. I think that whether, especially the church is an institution or it's an organization, when you give your tithe and the pastors or the church leaders are mismanaging it, it's not my business. I have to do my part. You know, Satan can even come to the church and destroy the top to the extent that people will feel bad and will not want to give to the work of God again. And I can bet you that some will say, oh, I want to give to donation. Later, the donation doesn't even enforce that you should give 10%. So one day they will just relax. Oh, okay. You know, that faith will not be there. If I'm donating to poor people, and I can decide that these people don't really need 10% of my salary. Maybe they just need 2%. And that is why tithing shouldn't be so rigid that apart from tithing, there is another option of giving offering. After offering, you can give alms to people, or you can do this offering. There are several things, and donations. So you don't have to be saying, oh, because I'm doing donation here, I don't have to give tithe to God. That shouldn't be. Because the tithe is wholly unto the Lord. You get it? If I do donations to some people and they are using it for anything, it may not be holy to them, just to survive. But the one you bring to the house of God, that's why Myonji mentioned that when she deducts that one first, that should be the first priority, even before you touch it. You don't spend, when it's left over, you come and give. That should be the number one budget you should make in your earnings. When it comes, just deduct that one and put it somewhere. Don't wait until you finish. So as for donations, I can decide when to give and how to give. You get that? I can decide that donations are not even part of 10%. You can even do more. I know tithing, we know 10% you can add something to it, but that shouldn't be. So I don't think we should bring it to the house of God. It's there. Just like you come to the house of God to worship on the Sabbath. Secondly, you can do your offering, you can do your donations to people, and that should be fine. That's what I think.
Yeah, totally agree. So what I was saying earlier is that of course, there's no question about it. I bring my tithe and offering to the house of God first. And as an additional measure, I have been supporting like a specific charity, and I'm thinking about maybe me having to do more, in that regard. And so, yeah, there is no question about that. But sometimes I do think it's excellent, even more excellent, if the church, let's say, gives a report on how the offering money has been spent, or what kind of Dorcas movement activities that they have been supporting, or the church maintenance fees, or how it's spent. Then the church congregation knows for sure, although it's not that we are doubting that it's being used well, but it's just for your information and to have this extra assurances that, oh yes, it's being spent well, so it would be good to have that, in my opinion. And I think it's kind of funny that I just saw after the main worship today, just before the recording of this podcast. So we are privileged to have this small room for foreigners and also little children, right, within our church. And I guess today during the worship service, these little kids, 3-4 girls, they were playing with the origami papers that we have. I guess the church kind of stocked those things for little children. And so they were folding, these origami papers and making things like, the one that Samuel has now, a paper plane. Anyway, so I guess one of the girls just thought that, the church pastor said I can use these origami papers. And so she used up every single origami paper that's within a package, so that's like, let's say 30 sheets of origami papers, right? And so when her grandmother saw what she had done, she came in, a little bit like upset, and she was kind of angry because the little girl had used up what's rightfully the church kind of resource. And so she was disciplining the little girl, saying, oh, how can you do this? It belongs to the church of, the house of God, and you just used it up. And the girl said, well, the pastor gave it to me, or, he said I can play with it. So the immediate reaction when I was listening to their conversation was, oh, maybe the grandma, she is being maybe, a little too harsh, or, But then now that we are talking about how the church money is being spent, or do we really know, where it's going, right? So looking at it as a church resource that the church congregation may have paid for, right? I'm assuming that was the case. Then yeah, I mean, I do think the deaconess had all the right things to say to the little girl, you know. So what I'm trying to say is, yeah, that was an interesting episode, by the way. Um, not that we are doubting that we should bring our tithe and offerings to the church, the house of God, to the church, and whether it's being spent in a non-corrupt way. You know, it's up to God. We know God is in control, so it's not that we are doubting it, but for the sake of this information and transparency, I do think the church congregation could benefit if those details were shared, and if there is a new need, let's say, there is a new area of need, then the church should be able to share that with the congregation as well, and we can make an informed decision. So maybe we will go out of our way to make additional offerings to pay for that cause, you know, that new good cause. So, yeah, just an interesting thing I thought I would share.
Next question may sound a bit. Sure.
Yeah, I think because maybe I don't know much about the Korean church system, but in other jurisdictions like in Ghana, this is already there, where from time to time the church treasury has to prepare the check accounts, go to the bank, all the monies in the bank that belongs to the church from tithe, the offering, the percentage breakdown, how much was sent to conference, how much was sent to general conference. Everything is done, and there is a time before the sermon. The church treasury comes in, then they read everything to them. Then they post on the notice to let people know how much the church got in this, even the Sabbath school classes, each of them, how much they were able to raise. So they normally do that, yeah, just to make sure people really get to know how much money they get. You know, some people think that before, sometimes some thought the monies, everything goes to the conference. They didn't know some monies were left in the church, the local church, and even at the district level. So they tell them, oh, we have this one at the local church now, this is what we make. So you also find that some people just pay tithe, they don't pay offering. So their local church is always poor. They think that the more, they feel impressed to pay the tithe but not offering. But when they pay big tithes, everything goes to the conference. It doesn't stay. So the church will now use that opportunity to tell them, if we have this big amount that has gone to the conference, you need to increase your tithe, your offering, so that the local church can get a big chunk of the money, so that we can use it to support the work of God. So they try to break it down for them. Yes.
Actually, as I was, pondering more on this topic, I do think that it's necessary for us to kind of have that question: is the offering money being spent well? From the perspective of, how there have been many church scandals, many big church scandals in Korea, for instance, and because we have seen it happening so many times, that has become a topic of many TV dramas, for instance, too, or movies, right? And so I remember this one, was it a movie or a drama? So there was a con artist who was behind the bar. So he was locked up because of what he had done, right? But then when he was in prison, he came to believe in God, right? And so the story goes, well, he didn't really believe in God. He just picked up some lines that he could potentially use posing as a pastor after he got out of prison. You know what I'm saying? And so his heart was not really in Christianity or in the work of God, but he was a very good person who could get by. And it's not that he knew anything about the Bible, but he would pick up some lines, and he's able to pose as a great preacher, right? And so that was a mechanism to even fool a wider range of people, because it was a big church, right? And so that con artist, working with another outside group, they were able to just scam, yeah, all the church congregation, and they got a lot of money, and yeah, they left, they escaped, you know. So of course this is a fiction, but because we have seen so many similar church scandals with the church money that the congregation pays, but then either the church leader or some groups of leaders, you know, they decide to do something bad with it, and you know, so I don't think it's a good thing that the church is known to be that place of corruption, to be honest. And so, yeah, if we can place some safety measures to ensure that everything is transparent, and yes, we bring to God joyfully, but also we know, we have this conviction that it is being used well for the right purposes, and I think that could be an added incentive for the church congregation to give more and try to support the various church activities. So I just wanted to throw it in there. So
Yeah. My next question is also, I picked this from on the internet. This may sound trivial, but what about your incomes? The numbers, the digits are not clear, like 0.5. And if you calculate your tithe, you see the numbers are not clear. Some of those monies are like in Korean currency, like 10 won or 100 won, and those small monies, or like in dollars, like cents. And when it comes to this, what would you do?
Yes, so that still comes back to the point I raised in the beginning. I feel that, for instance, if maybe government, after deducting my tax and insurance or pension, the amount is maybe they are paying you 2,000 or 19,520, right? And you calculate tax on it, and you are going to pay 1,902.56. Why should I come to church and go and specifically waste time and take 19,500, churn on pay, all those small things, and put it in an envelope? Just make it 20,000, or just make it 2,000, or make it 25,000, so that you don't make it. It should be something you should be excited to do. Let's say everybody wants to meet a big person, right? And let's say you are happy that a president is calling you, or somebody big is calling you, or people even want to get an opportunity to go and donate to maybe a president, a campaign, so that they will say, oh yeah, you contributed to the party. When the party comes, they will remember you, right? Then if you are going to donate to a party, you don't go and donate with these coins there. Why don't you, if you are giving to the work of God, which God has even admonished you to do, I should be excited that don't be so strict and so stingy. Let me put it that way. It's kind of stingy tithing. You should make sure just run it to the whole number and make it presentable. Yeah, and that should be the best part of it. Some people will even want to give tithe, maybe the wretched money, even though we think it's not spiritual, right? You can't go, if I want to give a present to maybe the president, like gift to the president, I may want to select the best part of my farm produce. Maybe if I'm having a potato, the best one. Or if I'm buying apples to give someone, even your friend, you have to give the best one. You don't want to give the wretched one. Or you don't want to give the small one. Let's say we are donating, even my farm is apple, right? Apples. Then I count all the apple trees in the farm. And apple, the fruits, and they are 10. But some are big, some are small, right? Then I'm supposed to give 10%. Then I go and take only the one big one small one, or even want to use a knife to cut. Okay, this, you get, it's just like cutting the money. Like, yeah, I'm supposed to give 5 apples, maybe 2.5 apples, or 2 apples, 3/4, because the Bible says 10%. Then I take a knife, the third apple I'll cut like this, put on the scale, 10. Okay, cut this part, put, change. It means you are really very strict with God. Yeah, that's why I said tithing is not just about incomes, but our earnings. People do tithing from their farm produce. People, Abraham days, they did tithing through their animals. So we should know that, let's say, I have 10 animals, right? No, I have 9 animals. and I have to give 1/10. Should I cut the ninth animal, take out the leg, and bring the rest? So just put it in that context.
Just to support Samuel on that idea, do not be so stingy. You're giving to God, the source of all wisdom and all blessings, right? So, and I want to leave you with this verse, Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. It says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So yes, I know we know those verses, and we love those verses. I just want to point out this aspect that when the money sits in your account, let's say, and you are not really giving, you are not returning it to God, what's rightfully His, then there is this concept that it's gonna rot, as these verses say. It's gonna go rusty, and the moth eaten, and it's no good. There is this sense that the money needs to keep circulating. It needs to go around, and even I think that concept comes from the Bible, to be honest, but it's also being preached by other, I don't know, thought leaders and these wealth preachers or motivational speakers, saying that yes, the money shouldn't just sit in one place, but it needs to go out, it needs to be spent, it needs to be sent for good causes. And I do think that the Bible in its entirety talks about that concept. So yes, do not be so stingy, but make sure your money gets stored up in heaven, where it will not be moth-eaten and go rusty.
Thanks for clarifying. My final question is, what can you say to those people who are having challenges paying tithe or giving offerings to God, like those maybe newborn Christians or those who are just beginning to become a Christian and they don't really feel a need for it, or sometimes they are challenged? Like, for instance, if someone gets a promotion, or somebody out there who got a double income suddenly, and now the tithe you have to pay are even larger. And what can you say to those people?
Okay, so that's why I was very happy when she mentioned that. But that's even the reverse for many people, right? You think, or yours in your case, you make more money now and you are even more happy to pay compared to when you were making low income because your demands were high. But a majority of people in the society, they can only give when the income is small. But when the income grows very much, they feel burdened to give. But that is the greedy part. You, because you have an excited mind to give, you think you can now take more and give. But some people, they begin to feel greedy, like Ananias and Sapphira. They see that now the amount they are supposed to give to the work of God is now too big. So it means God doesn't deserve it. That's the part. But so if some people, their income doubles suddenly, then they feel, oh, this amount doesn't fit to be given to God. But if they really know the need for giving, then they should be more excited to know that let me give. Because in the first place, I was not even supposed to get this, but it doubled. You don't know what happened and it came that way. So if it has doubled, why don't you give and think that maybe God can make another to make it triple, not even double? You don't know what can happen. Or you get a new job that pays even 10 times than that. So that should be. And the first part you were mentioning as new believers, I think the Bible says when Christ was saying, if your faith was just like a mustard seed. So it means our faith, our level of faith is different. Some people's faith is just maybe like the air. It can fade anytime. Some people mustard seed. Some people's seed thing will be like, faith will be like even an apple. You get that? So we have levels of faith. Abraham's faith was not the faith I have today. Maybe if they tell me to sacrifice somebody, I will really question God, Our faith may not be compared to that of Job. When you have lost everything, you still want to, because Job's faith was different from the wife. Because the wife said, oh, just curse God. She got to her limit, she couldn't bear it. So it means there's levels of faith. So I don't expect that I, maybe who was born in the church, and maybe I got parents who quickly introduced me to tithing even when I was young. What parents always do sometimes is that, one way to incorporate it in the kids is you go to church. Some parents just tithe and leave the children, even give the children the money to put in the church bowl. So whilst they grow, they know that, oh, I should put money in the church bowl, right? And adult ones too, even when they are growing, you can sit them down and tell them, oh, if you get this money, give this to God, and let them practice it from the beginning. Then that moves me to the point of somebody who was not even a Christian. He comes to the Adventist church, and they say, oh, you come to the house of God, you get blessing, and now you are telling him to give money to God, and he questions. Let them start small. Don't tell them just let them know that 10% is good for their tithes and offering they can do. But even if they don't have, some churches, if you go today and people don't go to church, some churches, I'm not talking about Adventists, some churches, that if you don't have money, they don't go to church. Because you'll be intimidated by the environment itself, that they'll be calling seat by seat, come in. So if you don't get up, you feel ashamed. So in that case, as Adventists or as Christians, even if they don't have, don't let them feel burdened. Because in the Bible, again, it tells us in the New Testament that do it willingly. It should not be by compulsion. If I don't have money to give tithe, I shouldn't say I won't go to church. So if that fellow cannot give 10%, just encourage, even if you have one coin and you give out of your heart. If I give to show off to everybody, I give 1,000,001 right now to church, then it's not from my heart, just to show off to my friends, oh, this guy really gives. It's questionable. But just like the widow, the poor widow, she gave out of her heart. Not only because she gave all she had, but she also gave out of her heart. So that's another thing. Let us encourage them to start small. If you take one salary, maybe you take $10,000, you feel burdened to give, how about just give maybe $1? When they do that, next time, oh, let me make it $2. Oh, next time they'll just, oh. Some people can even say, maybe I can just feel, maybe God does something so wonderful to me. Maybe I get some big money. I can just say, I don't need to give 10%. I don't need to give, I just want to give everything to God because it came from Him. Then see what God will do for me in the next step. Yes. So let us encourage them to start small. Yeah.
I just remembered God loves cheerful givers, right? I picked it up from, is it in the Bible? Yeah, cheerful givers. Yes. So yes, out of your heart, be a cheerful giver. And yes, I think that concludes today's talk.
Yeah.
So
There are beautiful stories like in Moses' time and in Solomon's time, where when people gave offerings willingly, it even reached at the point where they couldn't even handle. So the leaders prevented people to stop. They told them to. So they even told people to stop bringing more offerings because it's enough. And I think those stories were beautiful. For me personally, I was raised up as a Christian, and I think early education was beneficial to me. So even when I became an adult, like Samuel mentioned, everyone has different degrees of faith. I'm not saying that I have a higher degrees of faith, but I have my weak points. But my weak points are not in the monetary area. So I certainly have my weak points in other areas, but when it comes to money, I acknowledge God's sovereignty. So when I get salary or any incomes, when I get anything, I just thank God for giving me 100%, and He's still asking me only 10% of it. So I'm just grateful, because to my point of view, everything comes from God. Even my salary, He only asks me 10% of it, just to, obviously God doesn't need money, right? But while we're practicing this, we build our inner muscles, so we don't have to love money, because love of money is the root of sin, not the money itself. And while we practice tithing or offering, we build this inner muscles that we value more our relationship with God than the money. So, yeah. Well, today's podcast has been sorry.
So just as you mentioned, so Second Corinthians 9:7 says, "Let every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let them give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver."
That should conclude our today's podcast. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the Sabbath.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bible Talk by the Songdo International Seventh-day Adventist Church. Please leave your comments or questions on our YouTube channel, The Bible Time, or on our Facebook page, Songdo Adventist Church. We'll be back with more insightful and interesting dialogues that matter for the Christian youth today, so stay tuned. That's all for now. Signing off from Songdo, Republic of Korea. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.